All right, guys, welcome back. 1776 or bust. So this video is really just kind of a sort of questionnaire type of video, and it may not even be geared to everyone. So for those of you like myself who are living behind enemy lines, for example, New York State, maybe California, so on and so forth, one of the questions that usually gets, I guess, asked a lot is, if you can only have 10 rounds, why get a bigger gun? Why get a gun that is normally able to hold 15 or 16 rounds? Why would you do that? So the question I have for everybody today is, does the Glock 48 in a low capacity state like mine in New York, does it make more sense to own this gun versus an actual Glock 19? Now, obviously, there are going to be some pros and cons to both guns, size, weight, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, which one makes sense? Do they both make sense? Does this one make sense? Does that? I don't really know. And what I've been kind of pondering is, has this 48 actually made this into an antique for me? Because they both carry 10 rounds, they're both fairly easy to shoot, and they're very comfortable in my hand, at least my own. So I'm going to do a comparison on the table. I'm going to let you look at both, and at the end of the video, I'd love for all of you to chime in to tell me what you think. What are your thoughts? Does it make sense in a low capacity state to have something a little bit skinnier that has 10 rounds versus something that is as blocky as a 19 with the same capacity? So let's go to the table, and at the end, like I said, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. So here we go. All right, guys, so we're back at the table, and on the table you see the Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS. Fantastic handgun, one of my favorites. And next to it, it's sort of, I guess, skinnier, maybe better looking, feeling kind of sibling in the 48. Now, obviously, there are going to be some fans for both guns. Some people really enjoy the 19, and they like the fact that it's, a fairly decent gun to shoot. I mean, obviously, it's not the most comfortable gun, but there's a lot of great things about the Glock 19. The idea that it is universally recognized as probably one of the most sold handguns in the world. The idea that most law enforcement departments, military branches, those types of things will have these on hand, which is always good, and obviously people will always talk about the end of the world scenarios, and just knowing that you're going to have the ability to replace parts and magazines and you name it, because it's used basically everywhere. Well, then Glock came out with their 48. Now, obviously, the 48 is sort of like a pseudo 19. Obviously, it's not exact. The barrel's a little bit longer on this than the 19. And obviously, the magazine capacity, Glock is standard with 15 rounds, or the 19 is standard with 15 rounds, and the 48 is a standard 10-round magazine. But overall, this is not a review of both guns or a comparison of both guns. It's really to ask a question. Has the 48 actually replaced the 19 in low mag capacity states? And what I mean by that is, this gun sort of now on the outs. And the reason why I say that is because even though there's not a significant difference in, let's say, the width, yes, the 48 is a little bit narrower in regards to its width. This is, I believe, like something about like 1.1 inches wide, whereas this is about 1.2, 1.3 inches wide. So obviously there is a definite difference in the width between the two guns. And obviously the overall weight is, I think, where it's actually a bigger difference, whereas, the width, it's not necessarily there, where you're looking at an unloaded Glock 19 is about 24 ounces, give or take. And then when it's loaded up with its 15 capacity, unlike this guy, which only has 10 rounds, you're looking at about 31 ounces or so. And then, of course, the 48 unloaded is about 20 ounces, give or take again. And then loaded, it's 25 ounces. So there really, in my opinion, is a little bit more significance in the difference in weight than in width. But the question is, does the 48 actually make the 19 obsolete in a low capacity state like, let's say, New York? So, for example, when you're carrying this gun, it is a little bit thicker, obviously. It definitely is a little bit blockier. And again, you're basically carrying, for me, 10 rounds. Now, I know that's blasphemy for some of you. Again, I cannot move, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of comments saying, you should just move from your state. Well, that would be great if I was independently wealthy, but because I work, I can't do that. Now, of course, if we look at this and the gun is loaded, however, keep in mind, all guns are safety checked before videos take place. So obviously, if you look at the magazines and the differences between the size, there isn't necessarily a very significant difference in width, but you have a 10-round mag capacity here, 10-round mag capacity there, and the difference, while may not be necessarily that much, it still makes you wonder if whether or not this gun could ultimately replace this gun. Now, obviously, in the recent weeks, we've been hearing about California and how they allowed high-capacity magazines for about 2 days. And then, of course, they put a stay on it. So hopefully the Supreme Court will eventually hear it and eventually basically say that magazine restrictions are unconstitutional. But until that day happens, and until we see that change in, unfortunately, gun-friendly states like mine, or gun-unfriendly states like mine, you may only be restricted to these 10 rounds. So the question has to be asked, does the 48 actually hold more merit in regards to a state like mine than the 19? I mean, both shoot very well. Both are relatively easy to carry. I don't have one or the other that I would say is easier. Obviously, because this is a little bit thicker, once you carry it, you're going to see that little bit of that bulge sticking out with your holster. However, in my opinion, this is still the ideal size for a compact carry gun, even though it's a double stack, even though it's a lot chunkier. Well, I won't even say a lot, but slightly chunkier than, let's say, the 48. Ultimately, I think what I'm looking at here is when I look at the 48, and when I shot both of these side by side, I mean, both guns performed very well. It wasn't like there was one or the other that I felt more comfortable with. But for me, I still love the 19, but I still like the 48 as well. So the question is, should the 48 replace my 19? And I think that's ultimately the question that I have for all of you. If you were living in a capacity restricted state, does it make more sense to buy this gun than this gun? Now, obviously, it's good to have every option you have. For example, I've got a 19X, and while I'd love to have 16 rounds in this bad boy, or however many it carries, I don't know, 16, 17 rounds, you can see right here my magazine has been neutered, and it is only a 10-round magazine. If I can get it in the mag well, that'd be great. Now, of course, people will say, well, why do you have this gun if you can only carry 10 rounds? But my statement to that is, well, first off, it's ergonomically really good in my hand, and I do enjoy shooting the handgun. But at the same time, that is a good question. Should you own a gun like this when you can own a gun like that? And obviously there are some differences. This one has a red dot, this one does not. But you could always mill this and get a shield on here and basically have the same package as you have on this gun right here. And again, is it going to be easier to carry? Is it going to be easier to conceal? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on body type, depends on how you dress. But ultimately, what I'd like to hear from all of you are, what are your thoughts about this? Do you think someone living in a low capacity state like New York, or now again, California, and some of these other ridiculous states, do you think they are wasting their money buying something like this or even something like that? And should they just be going to a 48 or a 43X? So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Leave comments down below. This should be a really interesting discussion. And again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit that bell so you know when I've uploaded a video. And I hope you all have a great night. Stay safe. And as always, freedom is never free.